Have you got a layer cake that's just hanging around? Well, let's make a quilt. I've got a really cute pattern to show you today. It's called Gummies, and it's from Villa Rosa Designs. And as you may know, I have permission from the company to do tutorials on their designs. I just can't give you every little piece of information. But I'm Jennifer from Quilt and Stitches and Kitties, and I'm really glad to see you today. Welcome or welcome back. So let me show you what this quilt's all about. Here's a finished square. It's got matching pieces on two sides of a centerpiece and then a piece up here. And I separate my fabric into, as best I can, lights and darks. They're not going to be perfect because it's a layer cake. So I will put like a light on the outside, dark on the inside, vice versa, dark and light. And if you use an entire layer cake of 42 squares, it will finish at 51 by 59 inches. Well, I just had a leftover layer cake with about 18 pieces and a little bit of other fabric that would fit in. And so I decided I would demo by making Sherlock a little quilt because she hasn't had a new quilt in a really long time. So I need to show you how to cut this part. It's not super difficult. There's just one thing you need to be careful of. So let me get set up and I'll be right back. We start out with our 10-inch square, but you never know in a layer cake if in fact it's really 10 inches. So I always measure my pieces first. Sometimes there'll be one direction where they're all exactly 10, but the other one maybe they're a little bit less. If that's the case, put the 10 inches going across like this, okay? And then we're going to cut the first piece, which is 4 3/4 by 9 inches. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and cut this. This piece is perfect because I cut it from another piece of fabric. So 4 3/4 by 9. Well, this is 10. I'm going to go ahead and cut the 4 3/4. I'm just going to move this off to the side for a second, and then I'm going to cut this at the 9. So then this piece will be completely done. 4 3/4 by 9, not 9 1/2, but 9. So you've only got this little piece of waste. Okay, that's the first piece. Then we're going to cut all these pieces. So you've got at least 5 inches going across over here. Okay, the problem is if you have directional fabric for these pieces, you want to make sure and cut them exactly in the same orientation as you cut the first piece. So if you need to, put your first piece back up, look at the other piece and go, okay, I need to cut it this way. Okay, so what you're going to cut from this piece are 1 at 4 3/4 by 5 and 2 at 4 3/4 by 2 1/2. Well, I know for sure that this is good 10 inches, so I'm going to go ahead and cut off that extra 1/4 of an inch so I'm down to 4 3/4. And that will be for the whole piece. But I will have 5, and then I will have 2 1/2 and 2 1/2. So there's the other tiny little piece of waste. So now I'm going to cut this at 5. And if it's easier to think about this way, you can cut 2 5-inch squares and then cut this one in half. And sometimes that makes it easier for people to do it that way. Turn my ruler around and cut at the 2 1/2. Okay, so just be careful when you go to cut these that you've got them lined up, if it's directional, the way you want them. You may not care at all whether they're going in the same direction. I did care. Now this piece is going to be used in another block, but these two are going to line up. So you make your decision when you go to line them up. I don't want this right next to here, so I'm going to move it down this way and move it this way. But all my stripes are actually going in the same direction. So that's the cutting, and that's it. So you're going to cut that from every single block. If you have a non-directional fabric, don't worry about cutting it 2 or 3 blocks at a time. I usually don't cut more than 2 because layer cakes can be a little iffy and they might move or something. But if it's directional, you might want to just cut it 1 piece at a time to make sure you're getting these pieces the way you want. So let me sew a few together and I'll be right back. I've got all the blocks done and I've got them up, but I wanted to show you on the sewing. You're going to sew the 2.5 by 4 3/4 to the sides of each of the squares. You can press whichever way you want, towards a square or away. It doesn't matter. Just press really well. And then you will stitch on the top piece. And that I pressed away from this so that none of these seams were going towards this side. And so they ended up being really nice and flat. And the pattern up there is what was on the actual pattern that I put up. But I'm sure there's lots of different ways that you could arrange it. So mine finished up at about 36 by 45, I believe. I can't remember for sure. But remember, it's just for Sherlock. And I promise I will get it stitched together, I'll get it quilted, and I'll get it to her. So this is my very last piece, and I'm trying to remember which way it goes. And it goes like that. And I'm really pleased with it. It is bright and cheerful and fun and so easy. I got all these squares, so I sewed 20 squares together in about not even an hour and a half. The hardest part was putting them up on the board. So I actually alternated what I called a light block versus a dark block. And I started out with a light and alternated it throughout the quilt. And then you also turn which way the block is orienting with this. So if you're interested in the pattern, villarosadesigns.com. They only charge $2 for these patterns, and they are really fun. So if you have any questions, let me know. Thank you again, as always, for joining me. And if there's anything else you'd like to see, just drop it in the comments. I appreciate your time. Take care and have fun quilting. Here's my finished Gummies pattern. I made this for myself about 4 or 5 years ago, I think. Mine finished about 54 by 63. I added 2.5-inch borders all the way around. I decided to use black and whites for the lights like they showed in the pattern, and then I used K-facet fabric for the rest. And I really like it. I hope you do too. Later.